Hey, welcome back to Cool Classics. Last week when I made my video on Larry Storch, which is a really good one, you should check it out, I realized he's 98 years old and one of the oldest living American actors left. This led me to investigate who the oldest living American actresses are, and I come up with Marsha Hunt and Betty White. Let's take a quick look at their careers. First, we have Marsha Virginia Hunt, born October 17th, 1917 in Chicago, Illinois. She's 103 years old, and as of July 2021, she's alive and doing good. Here's a little bit of her story. Her father, Earl Hunt, was a lawyer, and her mother, Minabelle, was a voice teacher and an organist. Now, she also has an older sister named Marjorie, who became a school teacher. Her family moved to New York when she was really young, and that's where she began to perform in school plays and church functions. Now, she graduated early from the Horace Mann High School for Girls in 1934 when she was only 16. Now, she had been doing the drama class there too and doing plays, and the acting bug had really hit her. Now, her parents wanted her to pursue a college degree, but she wanted to go to college for drama. The only problem was she couldn't find a single university that would allow her to come in and major in drama until her third year. And so she went ahead and skipped all that and went and started taking acting classes at Theodora Irvine Studio. Now that's where she was discovered by the John Powers Agency, and they started to find her modeling work. And boy, that took off like crazy. Next thing you knew, in 1935, at the age of 17, she was their highest paid model. Later that same year, one of her pictures appeared in a newspaper, and Zeppo Marx seen it and talked to his agent and people and said, somebody's really missing an opportunity here. This girl has the look. And next thing you know, Paramount Pictures, I guess maybe they were tied in with Zeppo, decided to contact her. And by June of 1935, while still only 17, she signed a 7-year contract with Paramount Pictures. She ended up making 12 movies with Paramount from 1935 to 1938, including starring roles in Easy to Take, Gentle Julia, The Accusing Finger, Murder Goes to College, and they also loaned her out to RKO Films, where she starred opposite John Wayne in a western called Born to the West. Check this out.
So you're gonna marry Tom?
I never said that.
But you've been thinking about it, haven't you?
Not exactly.
Well, he's been thinking about it, hasn't he?
Maybe you'd better ask him.
You know, Tom says I ought to settle down. Maybe pick me out a nice girl and get married. And since you're not already spoken for, I guess I'll just marry you.
There. You tell your cousin Tom I think you'll live.
That'll probably be the worst news he has all day. Mighty nice of you to fix me up so pretty, Miss Judy. I'm much obliged to you.
You're welcome. Goodbye, Mr. Rudd.
Say, I proposed to you a little while ago. What do you think about it?
I'd rather not tell you. You've been hurt enough for one day.
Now, in 1938, Paramount released her from her contract. They felt like her popularity was on the decline, so she spent the next couple years working on what they call Poverty Row. And these are movie studios like Republic Pictures and Monogram Pictures. They're making B movies. And once you're a star and you end up in the B movies, you don't usually make it back to the mainstream. But she never stopped auditioning. She got really close in 1939 to play the part of Melanie Hamilton in Gone with the Wind, but she got beat out by Olivia, and you know what happened with that movie. Now, in 1940, she went out for MGM's version of Pride and Prejudice and got the part, and of course, it became a big hit. So MGM let her appear in Cheers for Miss Bishop in 1941, and again, another successful outing. Well, MGM took notice and they decided to sign her to a contract. And over the course of it, she ended up appearing in 21 movies for them. And during this time, she won some awards and she was invited to be on the board of the Screen Actors Guild. Now, during this time period, things were going along really well for Marsha. And she was also an activist, and she was taking on causes for a lot of underdogs and trying to help people out and a lot of women's rights. And then in 1947, the House Un-American Activities Committee started to take a look at Hollywood, and they would question writers, producers, and actors if they had any ties to communism. There was a big fear of the communists were invading Hollywood at the time. Now, before they could question her about anything, she went ahead and, being the activist that she was, created a thing called Hollywood Fights Back. So this was like a radio program, and it was co-written by her, and she released it, and that put her smack dab right in their sights. The committee didn't like this at all, and what they really didn't like was 3 days later, she and Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall flew to Washington and did a protest right there. Well, you can guess what happened next. She was named as a potential communist or communist sympathizer, along with 151 other actors, writers, and directors. It was the anti-communist movement, and they nailed her as like one of the lead people. Now, this didn't scare her in the least. She said, if there are communists in this country, then you need to find them. You don't need to ask me about them. And she refused to show up for questioning. Now, she thought everything would sort of go away, but it didn't. All the movie studios, everyone back in Hollywood, cut ties with her. They wanted nothing to do with her because they didn't want the government on them. And along with the rest of these actors and directors and writers that were on this list, they were all blacklisted. Nobody would hire them for like a decade or more. This ended so many careers right there. Most of them just gave up over time. We're talking over 10 years of having no phone calls returned, not being allowed to have a manager or agent, nobody in Hollywood going to have anything to do with you. Even if you did get an agent, no studio was going to ever hire you, and now they never want to speak to your agent again. So you're like the plague. And so she just kept doing what she did, which was activism during this time period. But she was one of the very few, and we're talking just a handful, to make it off of the blacklist and waited it out, and with great skills and determination got another, what you would call a third career in Hollywood. By the late 1950s, she started to appear in movies again, but they were very small roles. Now, she also started to appear on television, and these were the series of the time, like Panic or Matinee Theater, things that she could have a reoccurring role on. And one of them was Peck's Bad Girl, the series, and she played Jennifer Peck for 14 episodes, and that helped other shows take notice of her. Next thing you know, she was on The Detectives, The Plunderers, and it just kept going all the way through, like Gunsmoke, The Twilight Zone, The Defenders, Outer Limits, and yeah, from through the 60s, she probably appeared on one of the shows that you've watched. Now, she never did land another lead part in a big hit movie or a reoccurring role in a hit television series, but she did appear in things like Police Story multiple times, and all the way up through the 70s and 80s, pretty steady work, Murder, She Wrote, Matlock, things like that. In 1988, she was on Star Trek The Next Generation TV series, playing Ann Jameson in the episode Too Short a Season. So that's pretty cool there. Marsha is a prime example of what you can achieve if you just never give up. She had the government and all of Hollywood working against her at one point, but she persevered by never stopping doing what she loved. She had the passion, she wanted to be a great actress, and she continued on. I love stories like this, and what's even better is she's the oldest living American actress right now of July 2021. 103 years young. All right, now let's take a quick look at the early life of Betty White. She's 99 years old as of July 2021, and she has been in the business for over 80 years. She was born Betty Marion White in Oak Park, Illinois on January 17, 1922. She has stated that Betty is her legal name and it's not a shortened version of Elizabeth. Her mother, Christine, was a homemaker, and her father, Horace Logan White, was a lighting company executive. Her family moved to Alhambra, California in 1923 when she was just a little over a year old. Then later they moved to Los Angeles during the Great Depression. To make extra money, her father would build radios and sell them whenever he could, but since it was the Depression and nobody had very much money, he would sometimes have to just trade them for goods, including one time a dog. Betty graduated from Beverly Hills High School in 1939. At the time, her main interest was in wildlife, which was sparked by family vacations to the Sierra Nevada. She initially wanted to be a forest ranger, but was unable to accomplish this because women were not allowed to serve as rangers at the time. So instead, she pursued her other interest, which was in writing. She wrote and played the lead in a graduation play at Horace Mann School, and that's where she discovered her interest in performing. Inspired by her idols, Jeanette MacDonald and Nelson Eddy, she decided to pursue a career as an actress. Betty officially began her television career in 1939, 3 months after her high school graduation, when her and a classmate sang songs from The Merry Widow on an experimental television show. She was still only 17 at the time. After that, she started to find work in modeling, and then she got her first ever paying professional acting job at the Bliss Hayden Little Theater. That lasted a couple years, but when World War II broke out, she put her career on hold and volunteered for the American Women's Voluntary Services. Her assignment included the transportation of military supplies through California. She also participated in events for troops before they were deployed overseas. Now, after the war, Betty made the rounds to every movie studio in Hollywood looking for work, but she was always turned down because they told her she was not photogenic enough. This is not something that a young, aspiring actress wants to hear, but it didn't stop Betty for one moment. She thought, well, if they want to say I'm not photogenic enough, then I'll go to radio. And that's exactly what she did. She started out slow, just doing little bit parts, sometimes even being in the background, part of the crowd noises. And later, she started to make $5 a show when she would do a little skit or sing on one. Eventually, she started to be known throughout the radio business as the woman who could do it all. So all the big shows of the time were calling her to appear on their episodes. Some of her reoccurring roles appeared on Blondie, The Great Gildersleeve, and This Is Your FBI. After that and a couple more, she then was offered her own radio show called The Betty White Show. Now, with the success of her own radio show, television came calling. In 1949, she was asked to appear as a co-host with Al Jarvis on his daily live television variety show, Hollywood on Television. Originally, it was called the Al Jarvis Make-Believe Ballroom, but they had changed the name by then. The show was performed live, which meant sometimes you had to ad-lib to keep the flow going, and Betty was a natural at this. She would also sing at least twice per episode. After just 2 years on the show, in 1951, she was nominated for her first Emmy Award as Best Actress on Television, competing with such legendary stars such as Judith Anderson, Helen Hayes, Imogen Coca, and Gertrude Berg, who won the award. Although she didn't win it, she was very happy because this was the first time ever that the Emmys had a category designated for women on television. The very next year, 1952, was a big year for Betty White and a huge moment for women in television thanks to Betty White and all of the firsts that were about to come. She took over full-time hosting on the Hollywood television show, which was 5 hours a day of live performance, 6 days a week. After the show every day, even though they were exhausted, Betty and writers George Tibbles and Don Feddersen would get together and go on creative sprees where they would take existing characters from the show that they used earlier today and just go expand on them and come up with all new sketches and eventually created a whole new thing. They came up with a television show called Life with Elizabeth, starring Betty White as the lead character. Knowing that they created something really good here and not wanting to lose creative control over it, Betty said that they need to form their own production company. Even though it was kind of unheard of at the time for a woman to own a production company, Betty didn't think twice and she went ahead and filed the paperwork and co-founded Bandy Productions. The show was picked up by KCOP-TV, a local television station. This meant that Betty was now live on the air twice a day with 2 different shows for the rest of the year. All the long hours and hard work paid off. Later in the year of 1952, Betty won the Los Angeles Emmy Award for her work on Life with Elizabeth. The show was such a success that it was picked up nationally for syndication, and it ran from 1952 to 1955 nationwide, making Betty White the first woman in television with full creative control in front of the camera and behind the camera. Later on, Betty said, the show was very unusual for its times. It was a sitcom in the 1950s, co-produced and owned by a 28-year-old woman who still lived at home with her parents. Wink, wink. In 1954, she left the Hollywood on Television show to focus on forming another variety talk show of her own. The same year, she signed a deal with NBC and they created The Betty White Show on television. Just like with her sitcom, she had creative control over the entire series, and this time she was able to hire the first female director. Now, as the show started to gain popularity, it faced some criticism for the inclusion of Arthur Duncan, an African-American performer, as a regular cast member. The criticism followed when NBC expanded the show nationally. Local Southern stations threatened to boycott unless Duncan was removed from the series. In response to this, Betty White said, "I'm sorry, live with it," and she actually gave Duncan more airtime. Wow, I don't even know what else to say here. Look at all of the firsts that she's accomplished, and we're not even out of the 1950s yet. She is a true pioneer, and she's a living legend. We are lucky to still have her with us. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with more cool classics. And click one of the cards up above to see more women from the classic era of television. We have Donna Douglas, Barbara Eden, Melody Patterson, all the women of Hogan's Heroes. Stick around.